I came at low tide in my heaviest boots with a pocket full of plastic bags to the river steps below the Tate Modern. The impulse is forensic: bones, smooth corners of brick, masonry nails, coins, relics hidden among gravel and coal bruises to tempt future detectorists and amateur historians. At the start of this project, I read London in Fragments and MUDLARK'S Treasures by SANDLIng. This was a book that I found in the bookshop of the Museum of London, which I went to as part of my research. First few experiments of my project, I used vacuum forming to recreate the shapes of objects that I'd found in white plastic. I chose 4 objects: a brick, a plastic bottle, rope, and a piece of driftwood. And these were then put in the pop-up show Hybrid. I then began testing out photography using a macro lens, which led me to create some interesting images of the surfaces of the bones and a short film called Unknown Landscapes. This was then featured in the pop-up show. When the foundry reopened, I started trying to cast in bronze and aluminium, which I really enjoyed. Throughout this process, I learnt a lot about the different qualities of the 2 different metals and the casting process, and this is something I'd like to do again in the future if possible. I learnt how to use various kinds of tools, I learnt how to patinate, and this culminated in my bronzes being shown in the INTERIM show alongside the real bones. I was really happy with this outcome as a first kind of test. When we got back from the summer, I then started testing other materials using the same moulds that I'd made for the bronze and aluminium casting. This includes white plaster, herculite, pink silicone, which was really fun. As you can see in the video, it's really squishy. I also tried glass wax, which looked really interesting, and I then moved on to 3D scanning, which I tried quite a few different methods for. Initially I tried the iPad, which was available in digital media, but these scans were very rough and chunky and didn't capture any of the texture and only really got the rough shape. I then 3D printed one of these, and I liked how it looked, but it looked quite rough and unfinished. I then tried using a technique called photogrammetry, where you take lots of photographs of the object from all the way around and then stitch them together on software called Autodesk Recap Photo. But every time I tried, I ended up with half a model. It captured the detail of the bones really well, but I never ended up with a full 360 bone. As part of my research, I also looked at lots of exhibitions, including the Rachel Whiteread exhibition at the Tate Modern, which I found really inspiring. I've enjoyed her work for a long time, and I just love all the different objects that she's cast and the different materials she uses to cast them in. There was also the visit to Raphael Klein's studio, which helped me to realise that you can make the most of smaller spaces, and I think that's really important because obviously when I finish the MA I'm not going to have access to what I have access to at uni at the moment. There was also the white room at the Tate Modern, which really kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities of white. While I've been kind of angrily decrying white in the gallery space, it was really interesting to see work that pushed the boundaries with white and kind of subverted the gallery space in that way. I also got to see DIRK BRAEKMANI's exhibition at the BOZARE, and I really liked how his photographs felt familiar and yet unfamiliar at the same time, and how he plays with scenes that should look normal but makes them feel kind of otherworldly. I think that really relates to my project because I'm taking these objects I found along the river and turning them into something else. I also saw the Anthea Hamilton piece at the Tate Britain, the squash, and I think this really got me interested in performance art. I feel like I'd never really considered performance art for myself before this. I always felt like it was something I couldn't do, and I think this exhibition actually really made me want to give it a try myself. There's also the Yayoi Kusama exhibition at the Victoria Miro Gallery. I really enjoyed this exhibition. I've been a fan of her work for a long time, and it was really inspiring to see all of her work in person, particularly the huge bronze pumpkins. I had no idea that they were bronze, and I've been working so small scale with bronze. It was really interesting to see something so huge. During the Low residency, I saw an exhibition called Refigure Ground at the Arbite Gallery. I'd not really considered pushing my work that far into the digital before. For me, the 3D scans were just a way to make the 3D prints, so I was using digital to make something physical. But I think this exhibition really got me interested in exploring the digital as an art form itself, and I think going forwards I really want to teach myself how to use Blender and other 3D software so that I can try and start making work. So for the show, I want to have the River Thames outline painted onto the tabletop and my objects placed around this on the table. I'd also like a map at the end of the table for people so that they can play around with one of my 3D scans on Blender or Mesh Mixer themselves, because I'm really interested in interactive art, and I think it would be really nice if people can sit down and pick up my work and handle it and sit down at the screen and play with something on the screen themselves. And I'm interested in looking at which materials people are more likely to pick up. Will it be the more familiar materials or not? And I'm interested to see if people immediately go to the screen first or if they sit down and pick up the physical objects first. I think these are all things I want to examine during the exhibition while it's open.